Alright. Chapter 26. "I'd have sworn," said one intern, "when we first got there. That old man was dead." The ambulance and the police car had pulled up at the same moment at the crossroads going back into town. One of the interns had called over. Now one of the policemen called back. "You're joking." The interns sat in their ambulance. They shrugged. "Yeah, sure. Joking." They drove on ahead, their faces as quiet and white as their uniforms. The police followed, with Jim and Will huddled in the back, trying to say more, but the police had started talking and laughing, retelling everything that had happened to one another. So Will and Jim wound up lying, giving wrong names again, saying they lived around the corner from the police station. They let the police drop them at 2 dark houses near the station, and they ran up to those porches and grabbed the doorknobs and waited for the prowl car to swing off around the corner into the station. Then they came down and followed and stood looking at the yellow lights of the station, all sun-colored. At midnight, and Will glanced over and saw the whole evening come and go in Jim's face, and Jim watching the police station windows as if at any moment darkness might fill every room and put the lights out forever. On my way back into town, thought Will, I threw away my tickets, but look, Jim still has his in his hand. Will trembled. What did Jim think, want, plan, now that dead men lived, and only lived through the fire of white-hot electric chair machines? Did he still very much love carnivals? Will searched. Faint echoes, yes, they came, they went in Jim's eyes, for Jim, after all, was Jim, even standing there with the calm light of justice falling on his cheekbones. "The chief of police," Will said. "He'd listen to us." "Yeah," said Jim. "He'd wait just long enough to send for the butterfly net. Hell, William, hell. Even I don't believe what's happened in the last 24 hours. But we ought to find someone higher up. Keep trying, now we know what the score is." "Okay, what's the score? What's the carnival done is so bad? Scared a woman with a mirror maze? So she scared herself at the police would say. Burgled a house? Okay, where's the burglar? Hiding inside an old man's skin? Who'd believe that? Who'd believe an old man was ever a boy 12? What else is the score? Did a lightning rod salesman disappear? Sure, and left his bag, but he could have left town. That dwarf at the sideshow. I saw him. You saw him. Looks kinda like the lightning rod man, sure, but again, can you prove he was ever big? No, just like you can't prove Cougar was ever small. So that leaves us right here, Will, on the sidewalk. No proof except what we saw, and us just kids, the carnival's word against ours, and the police had a fine time there anyway. Oh gosh, it's a mess. If only there was still some way to apologize to Mr. Cougar." "Apologize?" Will yelled. "To a man-eating crocodile? Jehoshaphat, you still don't see we can't do business with those Ulmers and Goffs?" "Ulmers? Goffs?" Jim gazed upon him thoughtfully, for that was how the boys talked of the creatures who dragged and swayed and slumped through their dreams. In the bad dreams of William, the Ulmers moaned and gibbered and had no faces. In the equally bad dreams of Jim, the Goffs, his peculiar name for them, grew like monster meringue paste mushrooms, which fed on rats, which fed on spiders, which fed in turn, because they were large enough, on cats. "Ulmers, Goffs," said Will. "You need a 10-ton safe to fall on you? Look at what happened to 2 folks already, Mr. Electrico and that terrible crazy dwarf. All kinds of things can go wrong with people on that darn machine. We know. We seen it. Maybe they squashed a lightning rod man down that way on purpose. Or maybe something went wrong. Fact is, he wound up in a wine press anyway, got run over by a steamroller carousel. And so crazy now he doesn't even know us. Ain't that enough to scare the Jesus out of you, Jim? Why, maybe even Cressetti—" "Mr. Cressetti's on vacation." "Maybe yes, maybe no. There's his shop. There's the sign, closed on account of illness. What kind of illness, Jim? He eat too much candy out at the show? He got seasick on everybody's favorite ride?" "Cut it, Will." "No, sir, I won't cut it. Sure, the merry-go-round sounds keen. You think I like being 13 all the time? Not me. But for cry-eye, Jim, face it, you don't really want to be 20. What else we talked about all summer?" Talk? Sure. But throwing yourself head first in that taffy machine and getting your bones pulled long? Jim, you wouldn't know what to do with your bones then. I'd know, said Jim in the night. I'd know. Sure. You just go away and leave me here, Jim. Why, protested the other, I wouldn't leave you, Will. We'd be together. Together. You 2 feet taller and going around feeling your leg and arm bones. You looking down at me, Jim? And what'd we talk about? Me with my pockets full of kite string and marbles and frog eyes, and you with clean, nice, and empty pockets, and making fun. Is what we'd talk about. Is that what we'd talk? And you'd be able to run faster and ditch me. I'd never ditch you, Will. Ditch me in a minute. Well, go on, Jim. Just go on and leave me, because I got my pocket knife and there's nothing wrong with me sitting under a tree playing mumbly peg while you get yourself plain crazy with the heat of all those horses racing around. But thank God they're not racing anymore. And it's your fault, cried Jim. He stopped. Will stiffened and made fists. You mean I shouldn't have let young and mean and terrible get old and mean and terrible enough to chew our heads off? Just let him ride around and huck his spit in our eye? And maybe you with him, waving goodbye, going around and again waving so long, and all I gotta do is wave back, Jim. Is that what you mean? Shh, said Jim. Like you say, it's too late. Carousel's broke. And when it's fixed, they ride old horrible Cougar back, make him young enough so he can speak and remember our names. And then they come back like cannibals after us. Or just me, if you want to get in good with them and tell them my name and where I live. I wouldn't do that, Will. Jim touched him. Oh, Jim, you do see, don't you? Everything in its time, like the preacher said only last month. Everything 1 by 1, not 2 by 2. You remember? Everything, said Jim, in its time. And then they heard the voices from the police station. In one of the rooms to the right of the entrance, a woman was talking now, and men were talking. Will nodded to Jim, and they ran quietly over to pick their way through the bushes and look into the room. There sat Miss Foley. There sat Will's father. I don't understand, said Miss Foley. To think Will and Jim would break into my house, steal, run off? You saw their faces? Asked Mr. Holloway. When I screamed, they looked back under the light. She's not mentioning the nephew, thought Will. And she won't, of course. You see, Jim, he wanted to shout. It was a trap. The nephew waited for us to come prowling. He wanted us to get in so much trouble, no matter what we said to anybody, police, parents, that nobody'd listen to us about carnivals, late hours, merry-go-rounds, because our word'd be no good. I don't want to prosecute, said Miss Foley, but if they are innocent, where are the boys? Here, someone cried. Will, said Jim. Too late, for Will had jumped high and was scrambling through the window. Here, he said simply, as he touched the floor. Chapter 27. They walked home quietly on the moon-colored sidewalks, Mr. Holloway between the boys. When they reached home, Will's father sighed. Jim, I don't see any reason to tear your mother to bits at this hour. If you promise to tell her the whole thing at breakfast, I'll let you off. Can you get in without waking her up? Sure, look what we got. We? Jim nodded and took them over to fumble along among the clusters of thick moss and leaves on the side of the house until they found the iron rungs they had secretly nailed and placed to make a hidden ladder up to Jim's room. Mr. Holloway laughed, once, almost in pain, and a strange, wild sadness shook his head. How long has this gone on? No, don't tell. I did it too, your age. And he looked up at the ivy toward Jim's window. Fun being out late, free as all hell. He caught himself. You don't stay out too long. This week was the very first time after midnight. Dad pondered a moment. Having permission would spoil everything, I suppose. And sneaking out to the lake, the graveyard, the rail tracks, the peach orchards, summer nights that counts. Gosh, Mr. Holloway, did you once? Yes, but don't let the women know I told you. Up, he motioned. And don't come out again any night for the next month. Yes, sir. Jim swung monkey-wise up to the stars. Flashed through his window, shut it, drew the shade. Dad looked up at the hidden rungs coming down out of the starlight, to the running free world of sidewalks that invited the 1,000-yard dash, and the high hurdles of dark bushes, and the pole vault cemetery trellises and walls. You know what I hate most of all, Will? Not being able to run anymore like you. Yes, sir, said his son. Let's have it clear now, said Dad. Tomorrow, go apologize to Miss Foley again. Check her lawn. We may have missed some of the stolen property with matches and flashlights. Then go to the police chief to report. You're lucky you turned yourself in. You're lucky Miss Foley won't just press charges. Yes, sir. They walked back to the side of their own house. Dad raked his hand in the ivy. Our place too? His hand found a rung Will had nailed away among the leaves. Our place too. He took out his tobacco pouch, filled his pipe as they stood by the ivy, the hidden rungs leading up to warm beds, safe rooms, then lit his pipe and said, You know, you're not acting guilty. You didn't steal anything. No. Then why did you say you did it to the police? Because Miss Foley, who knows why, wants us guilty. If she says we are, we are. You saw how surprised she was to see us come in through the windows. She never figured we'd confess. Well, we did. We got enough enemies without the law on us, too. I figured if we made a clean breast, they'd go easy. They did. The same time, boy, Miss Foley's one too. Because now we're criminals. Nobody'll believe what we say. I'll believe. Will you? Will searched the shadows of his father's face, saw whiteness of skin, eyeball, and hair. Dad, the other night, at 3 o'clock in the morning. 3 in the morning. He saw Dad flinch as from a cold wind, as if he smelled and knew the whole thing and simply could not move, reach out, touch, and pat Will. And he knew he could not say it. Tomorrow, yes, some other day, yes, for perhaps with the sun coming up, the tents would be gone, the freaks off over the world, leaving them alone, knowing they were scared enough not to push it, say anything, just to keep their mouths shut. Maybe it would all blow over. Maybe. Yes, Will, said his father with difficulty, the pipe in his hand going dead. Go on. No, thought Will. Let Jim and me be cannibalized, but no one else. Anyone that knows gets hurt, so no one else must know. Aloud, he said, In a couple days, Dad, I'll tell you everything, I swear. Mom's honor. Mom's honor, said Dad at last, is good enough for me. Chapter 28. The night was sweet, with the dust of autumn leaves that smelled as if the fine sands of ancient Egypt were drifting to the dunes beyond town. How come, thought Will, at a time like this, I can even think of 4,000 years of dust of ancient people sliding around the world, and me sad because no one notices except me, and Dad here maybe, and even us not telling each other. It was indeed a time between. 1 second their thoughts all brambled Airedale, and the next all silken, slumbering cat. It was a time to go to bed, yet they still lingered reluctant as boys to give over and wander in wide circles to pillow and night thoughts. It was a time to say much, but not all. It was a time after first discoveries, but not last ones. It was wanting to know everything and wanting to know nothing. It was the new sweetness of men starting to talk as they must talk. It was the possible bitterness of revelation. Thank you so much for the lurk, Campbell. I appreciate it. So while they should have gone upstairs, they could not depart this moment that promised others on not-so-distant nights, when man and boy becoming man must almost sing. So Will at last said carefully, Dad, am I a good person? I think so. I know so, yes. Will that help when things get really rough? It'll help. Will it save me if I need saving? I mean, if I'm around bad people and there's no one else good around for miles, what then?
It'll help.
That's not good enough, Dad.
Good is no guarantee for your body. It's mainly for peace of mind.
But sometimes, Dad, aren't you so scared that even...
The mind isn't peaceful?
His father nodded, his face uneasy. Dad, said Will, his voice very faint, are you a good person?
To you and your mother, yes, I try. But no man's a hero to himself. I've lived with me a lifetime, Will. I know everything worth knowing about myself.
And adding it all up?
The sum? As they come and go, I mostly sit very still and tight. Yes, I'm all right.
Then, Dad, asked Will, why aren't you happy?
The front lawn at, let's see, 1:30 in the morning is no place. Start a philosophical.
I just wanted to know is all. There was a long moment of silence. Dad sighed. Dad took his arm, walked him over, and sat him down on the porch steps, relit his pipe. Puffing, he said,
all right, your mother's asleep. She doesn't know we're out here with our tomcat talk. We can go on. Now look, since when did you think being good meant being happy?
Since always.
Since now, learn otherwise. Sometimes the man who looks happiest in town with the biggest smile is the one carrying the biggest load of sin. There are smiles and smiles. Learn to tell the dark variety from the light. The seal barker, the laugh shouter, half the time he's covering up. He's had his fun and he's guilty, and men do love sin, Will. Oh, how they love it. Never doubt, in all shapes, sizes, colors, and smells. Times come when troughs, not tables, suit our appetites. Hear a man too loudly praising others and look to wonder if he didn't just get up from the sty. On the other hand, that unhappy, pale, put-upon man walking by who looks all guilt and sin, why, often that's your good man with a capital G, Will. For being good is a fearful occupation. Men strain at it, and sometimes break in two. I've known a few. You work twice as hard to be a farmer as to be his hog. I suppose it's thinking about trying to be good that makes the crack run up the wall one night. A man with high standards, too, the least hair falls on him sometimes wilts his spine. He can't let himself alone, won't lift himself off the hook if he falls just a breath from grace. Oh, it would be lovely if you could just be fine, act fine, not think of it all the time, but it's hard, right? With the last piece of lemon cake waiting in the icebox, middle of the night, not yours, but you lie awake in a hot sweat for it, eh? Do I need to tell you? Or a hot spring day, noon, where you are chained to your school desk and away off there goes the river, cool and fresh over the rockfall. Boys can hear clear water like that miles away. So minute by minute, hour by hour, a lifetime, it never ends, never stops. You got the choice this second, now this next, and the next after that. Be good, be bad, that's what the clock ticks, and that's what it says in the ticks. Run, swim, or stay hot. Run, eat, or lie hungry. Do you stay? But once stayed, Will. You know the secret, don't you? Don't think of the river again. Or the cake. Because if you do, you'll go crazy. Add up all the rivers never swum in, cakes never eaten, and by the time you get my age, Will, that's a lot missed out on. But then you console yourself, thinking the more times in, the more times possibly drowned, or choked on lemon frosting. But then, through just plain dumb cowardice, I guess, maybe you hold off from too much. Wait. Play it safe. Look at me. Married at 39, Will. 39! But I was so busy wrestling myself. 2 falls out of 3. I figured I couldn't marry until I had licked myself good and forever. Too late, I found. You can't wait to become perfect. You gotta go out and fall down and get back up with everyone else. So at last I looked up from my great self-wrestling match one night, and when your mother came into the library for a book, got me instead. And I saw then and there that you take a man half bad and a woman half bad and put their 2 good halves together, and you got one human all good to share between. That's you, Will, for my money. And the strange thing is, son, and sad too, though you're always racing out there on the rim of the lawn, and me on the roof using books for shingles comparing life to libraries, I soon saw you were wiser, sooner, and better than I ever will be.
Dad's pipe was dead. He paused to tap it out and reload it. No, sir, Will said.
Yes, said his father. I'd be a fool not to know I'm a fool. My one wisdom is, you're wise.
Funny, Will said after a long pause. You've told me more tonight than I've told you. I'll think some more. Maybe I'll tell you everything at breakfast. Okay?
I'll be ready if you are.
Because I want you to be happy, Dad. He hated the tears that sprang to his eyes.
I'll be all right, Will.
Anything I could say or do to make you happy, I would.
William.
Dad lit his pipe again and watched the smoke blow away in sweet dissolvings.
Just tell me I'll live forever. That would do nicely.
His voice, Will thought. I never noticed it. It's the same color as his hair. Pa, he said, don't sound so sad.
Me? I'm the original sad man. I read a book and it makes me sad. See a film? Sad. Plays? They really work me over.
Is there anything, said Will, that doesn't make you sad?
One thing. Death.
Boy, Will started. I should think that would.
No, said the man with the voice to match his hair. Death makes everyone else sad. But death itself only scares. If there wasn't death, all the other things wouldn't get tainted.
And, Will thought, here comes the carnival. Death like a rattle in one hand, life like candy in the other. Shake one to scare you, offer one to make your mouth water. Here comes the sideshow, both hands full. He jumped to his feet. Dad, oh listen, you'll live forever, believe me, or you're sunk. Sure, you were sick a few years ago, but that's over. Sure, you're 54, but that's young. And another thing.
Yes, Willie?
His father waited for him. He swayed. He bit his lips, then blurted out, Don't go near the carnival.
Strange, his father said. That's what I was going to tell you.
I wouldn't go back to that place for $1 billion. But, Will thought, that won't stop the carnival searching through town to visit me. Promise, Dad?
Why don't you want me to go there, Will?
That's one of the things I'll tell tomorrow, or next week, or next year. You just gotta trust me, Dad.
I do, son.
Dad took his hand.
It's a promise.
As if at a signal, both turned to the house. The time was up, the hour was late. Enough had been said, they properly sensed. They must go.
The way you came out, said Dad, is the way you go in.
Will walked silently to touch the iron rungs hidden under rustling ivy. Dad, you won't pull these off?
Dad probed one with his fingers. Someday, when you're tired of them, you'll take them off yourself.
I'll never be tired of them.
Is that how it seems? Yes, to someone your age, you figure you'll never get tired of anything. All right, son, up you go.
He saw how his father looked up along the ivy and the hidden path. You want to come up this way too?
No, his father said quickly.
Because, said Will, you're welcome.
That's all right. Go on.
But he still looked at the ivy, stirring in the dark morning light. Will sprang up, grabbed the first, the second, the third rungs, and looked down. From this distance, Dad looked as if he were shrinking, there on the ground. Somehow he didn't want to leave him behind there in the night, like someone ditched by someone else, one hand up to move, but not moving. Dad, he whispered, you ain't got the stuff. Who says? Cried Dad's mouth silently, and he jumped. and laughing without sound, the boy, the man, swung up the side of the house, unceasingly, hand over hand, foot after foot. He heard Dad slip, scrabble, grab. Hold tight, he thought. Ah! The man breathed hard. Eyes tight, Will prayed. Hold. There. Now. The old man gusted out, sucked in, swore in a fierce whisper, then climbed again. Will opened his eyes and climbed, and the rest was smooth, high, higher, sweet, fine, wondrous, done. They swung in and sat upon the sill, same size, same weight, colored by the same stars, and sat embraced once more with grand find exhaustion, gasping on huge engulped laughs which swept their bones together, and for fear of waking God, country, wife, mom, and hell, they snug-clapped hands to each other's mouths, feeling the vibrant, warm hilarity fountained there, and sat one instant longer, eyes bright with each other and wet with love. Then, with another strong clasp, Dad was gone, the bedroom door shut. Drunk on the long night's doings, lulled away from fear toward better, grander things found in Dad, Will slung off, limp falling clothes with tipsy arms and delightful aching legs like fall timber, chopped himself into bed. Welcome in, Backup. Chapter 29. He slept for exactly 1 hour. And then, as if remembering something he had only half seen, he woke, sat up, and peered out at Jim's rooftop. "The lightning rod!" he yelped. "It's gone!" Which indeed it was. Stolen? No. Jim take it down? Yes. Why? For the shucks of it. Smiling, he had climbed to scuttle the iron, dare any storm to strike his house. Afraid? No. Fear was a new electric power suit Jim must try on for size. "Jim!" Will wanted to smash his confounded window. "Go nail the rod back. Before morn, Jim, the blasted carnival sends someone to find where we live. Don't know how they'll come or what they'll look like, but Lord, your roof's so empty. The clouds are moving fast. That storm's rushed at us and—" Will stopped. What sort of noise does a balloon make adrift? None. No, not quite. It noises itself. It sows like the wind billowing your curtains. All white as it breathes of foam, or makes a sound like the stars turning over in your sleep, or it announces itself like moonrise and moonset. That last is best. Like the moon sailing the universe deeps, so rides a balloon. How do you hear it? How are you warned? The ear, does it hear? No. But the hairs on the back of your neck, the peach fuzz in your ears, they do. And the hair along your arms sings like grasshopper legs frictioned and trembling with strange music. So you know, you feel, you are sure lying abed that a balloon is submerging the ocean sky. Will sensed a stir in Jim's house. Jim, too, with his fine dark antennae, must have felt the waters part high over town to let a leviathan pass. The boys felt the shadow bulk the drive between their houses. Both flung open their windows, both poked their heads out, both dropped their jaws in surprise at this friendly, this always exquisite timing, this delightful pantomime of intuition, of apprehension, their tandem teamwork over the years. Then, silver-faced, for the moon was rising, both glanced up, as a balloon wafted over and vanished. "Holy cow, what's a balloon doing here?" Jim asked, but wished no answer. For peering, they both knew the balloon was searching the best search ever. No car motor racket, no tires whining asphalt, no footstepped street. Just the wind clearing a great Amazon through the clouds for a solemn voyage of wicker basket and storm sail riding over. Neither Jim nor Will crashed his window or pulled his shade.
They simply had to stay motionless, waiting, for they heard the noise again like a murmur in someone else's dream. The temperature dropped 40 degrees, because now the storm-bleached balloon was whisper-pearled, plummet sank softly down, its elephant shadow cooling gemmed lawns and sundials as they flaunted their swift gaze high through the shadow. And what they saw was something akimbo and a rustle in the down-hung wicker carriage. Was that Head and Shoulders? Yes. With the moon like a silver cloak thrown up behind. Mr. Dark, thought Will. The Crusher, thought Jim. The Wart, thought Will. The Skeleton, the Lava Sipper, the Hanging Man, Monsieur Guillotine. No. The Dust Witch. The witch who might draw skulls and bones in the dust, then sneeze it away. Jim looked to Will, and Will to Jim. Both read their lips. The witch! But why a wax crone flung out at night, in a night balloon to search? Thought Will. Why none of the others with their lizard venom, wolf fire, snake pit eyes? Why send a crumbled statue with blind newt lashes sewn tight with black widow thread? And then, looking up, they knew. For the witch, through peculiar wax, was peculiarly alive. Blind, yes, but she thrust down rust-splotched fingers, which petted, stroked the sluices of air, which cut and splayed the wind, peeled layers of space, blinded stars which hovered and danced, then fixed and pointed, as did her nose. And the boys knew even more. They knew that she was blind, but special blind. She could dip down her hands to feel the bumps of the world, touch house roofs, probe attic bins, reap dust, examine droughts that blew through halls and souls that blew through people, droughts vented from bellows to thump wrist, to pound temples, to pulse throat, and back to bellows again. Just as they felt that balloon sift down like an autumn rain, so she could feel their souls re-inhabit their tremulous nostrils. Each soul a vast, warm fingerprint, felt different. She could roil it in her hand like clay, smelled different. Will could hear her snuffing his life away, tasted different. She savored them with her raw-gummed mouth, her puff-addered tongue, sounded different. She snuffed their souls in one ear, tissued them out the other. Her hands played down the air. One for Will, one for Jim. The balloon shadow washed them with panic, rinsed them with terror. The witch exhaled. The balloon, freed of this small, sour ballast, uprose. The shadow passed. "Oh God," said Jim. "Now they know where we live." Both gasped. Some monstrous baggage brushed and dragged across the shingles of Jim's house. "Will, she's got me!" "No, I think—" The drag, brush, rustle scurried from bottom to top of Jim's roof. Then Will saw the balloon whirl up, fly off toward the hills. "She's gone. There she goes. Jim, she did something to your roof. Shove a monkey pole over." Jim slid the long, slender clothesline pole over. Will fixed it on his sill, then swung out, hand over hand, swung until Jim pulled him through his window. They barefooted it into Jim's clothes closet and boosted and hoisted each other inside the attic that smelled like lumber mills, old, dark, and too silent. Perched out on the high roof shivering, Will cried, "Jim, there it is!" And there it was, in the moonlight. It was like a snail paints on sidewalk. It was a track like a snail paints on sidewalk. It glistened. It was silver slick, but this path was left by a gigantic snail that, if it existed at all, weighed 100 pounds. The silver ribbon was a yard across. Starting down at the leaf-filled rain trough, the silver track shimmered to the rooftop, then tremored down the other side. "Why?" gasped Jim. "Why? Easier than looking for house numbers or street names. She marked your roof so you can see it for miles around, day or night." "Oh my gosh," Jim bent to touch the track. A faint, evil-smelling glue covered his finger. Will, what do we do? I got a hunch, the other whispered. They won't be back till morning. They can't just start a rumpus, they got some plan. Right now, there's what we'll do. Coiled across the lawn below like a vast boa constrictor waiting for them was the garden hose. Will was gone down, fast, and didn't knock anything over or wake anyone up. Jim, on the roof, was surprised in no time at all when Will came scuttling up, all panting teeth, the water fizzing hose within his fist. Will, you're a genius. Sure, quick. They dragged the hose to drench the shingles, to wash the silver, flood the evil mercury paint away. Working, Will glanced off at the pure color of night turning toward morn and saw the balloon trying to make decisions on the wind. Did it sense? Would it come back? Would she mark the roof again and they'd have to wash it off, and she mark it and they'd wash it off until dawn? Yes, if need be. If only, thought Will, I could stop the witch for good. They don't know our names or where we live. Mr. Cougar's too near death to remember or tell. The dwarf, if he is the lightning rod salesman, is mad, and, God willing, they won't recollect. And they don't dare bother Miss Foley until morning. So grinding their teeth way out in the meadows, they've sent the dust witch to search. I'm a fool, grieved Jim quietly, rinsing the roof where the lightning rod had been. Why didn't I leave it up? Lightning hasn't struck yet, Will said, and if we jump lively, it won't. Now, over there. They showered the roof. Below, someone put down a window. Mom, Jim laughed weakly. She thinks it's raining. Chapter 30. The rain ceased. The roof was clean. They let the hose snake away to thump on the night grass 1,000 miles below. Beyond town, the balloon still paused between unpromising midnight and promised and hoped-for sun. Why is she waiting? Maybe she smells what we're up to. They went back down through the attic, and soon were in separate rooms and beds, after many fevers and chills of talk, and now lay quietly, separate, listening to hearts and clocks beat too quickly toward dawn. Whatever they do, thought Will, we must do it first. He wished the balloon would fly back. The witch might guess they had washed their mark off and soar down to trace the roof again. Why? Because. He found himself staring at his Boy Scout archery set, the big, beautiful bow and quiver of arrows arranged on the east wall of his room. Sorry, Dad, he thought, and sat up smiling. This time, it's me out, alone. I don't want her going back to report on us for hours, maybe days. He grabbed the bow and quiver from the wall, hesitated, thinking, then stealthily ran the window up and leaned out. No need to holler loud and long, no. Just think real hard. They can't read thoughts, I know, that's sure, or they wouldn't send her. And she can't read thoughts, but she can feel body heat and special temperatures, and special smells and excitements, and if I jump up and down and let her know, just by my feeling good about having tricked her, maybe. 4 o'clock in the morning, said a drowsy clock chime off in another land. Witch, he thought, come back. Witch, he thought louder, and let his blood pound. The roof's clean, here? We made our own rain. You gotta come back and remark it. Witch? The witch moved. He felt the earth turn under the balloon. Okay, witch, come on. There's just me, the no-name boy. You can't read my mind, but here's me spitting on you. And here's me yelling we tricked you, and the general idea gets through, so come on, dare, double dare you. Miles away there was a gasp of assent rising, coming near. Holy cow, he thought suddenly. I don't want her back to this house. Come on. He thrashed into his clothes. Clutching his weapons, he aped down the hidden ivy rungs and dodged the wet grass. Witch, here! He ran, leaving patterns, feeling crazy fine. Wild as a hare who has chewed some secret delicious sweetie poisonous root that now gallops him berserk.
Knees striking his chin, shoes crushing wet leaves, he soared over a hedge, his hands full of bristly porcupine weapons. Fear and joy a tumble of mixed marbles in his mouth. He looked back. The balloon swung near. It inhaled, exhaled itself from tree to tree, from cloud to cloud. Where am I going? He thought. Wait, the Redmond house. Not lived in years. 2 blocks more. There was a swift shush of his feet in the leaves, and the big shush of the creature in the sky, while moonlight snowed everything and stars glittered. He pulled up in front of the Redman house, a torch in each lung, tasting blood, crying out silently, "Here, this is my house." He felt a great river change its bed in the sky. Good, he thought. His hand turned on the doorknob of the old house. Oh God, he thought, what if they are inside, waiting for me? He opened a door on darkness. Dust came and went in that dark, and a harp-string gesticulation of spiders. Nothing else. Will jumped 2 at a time up the crumbling stairs, around and out on the roof where he stashed his weapons behind the chimney and stood tall. The balloon, green as slime, printed with titan pictures of winged scorpions, ancient phoenixes, smokes, fires, clouded weathers, swung its wicker basket wheezing down. Which, he thought, here. The dank shadow struck him like a bat wing. Will toppled, flung up his hands. The shadow was almost black flesh, striking. He fell. He clutched the chimney. The shadow draped him, hushing down. It was cold as a sea cave in that cloud dark. But suddenly the wind itself veered. The witch hissed in frustration. The balloon swam a washing circle up around. The wind, thought the boy wildly. It's on my side. No, don't go, he thought. Come back. For he feared she had smelled his plan. She had. She itched for his scheme. She snuffed. She gasped at it. He saw the way her nails filed and scraped the air as if running over grooved wax to see patterns. She turned her palms out and down as if he were a small stove burning softly somewhere in a netherworld, and she came to warm her hands at him. As the basket swung in an up-glided pendulum, he saw her squinched, blind-sewn eyes, the ears with moss in them, the pale, wrinkled apricot mouth mummifying the air it drew in, trying to taste what was wrong with his act, his thought. He was too good, too rare, too fine, too available to be true. Surely she knew that. And knowing, she held her breath, which made the balloon suspend itself, half between inhale and exhale. Now, tremulously, experimentally, daring to test, the witch inhaled. The balloon, so weighted, sank. Exhaled, so freed of the vapor, the craft ascended. Now, the waiting, the holding of dank, sour breath in the wry tissues of her childlike body. Will waggled his fingers, thumb to nose. She sucked air. The weight of this one breath skimmed the balloon down. Closer, he thought. But careful, she circled her craft, scenting the sharp adrenaline wafted from his pores. He wheeled, following the balloon, spun, and him reeling. You, he thought, you want me sick. Spin me, will you? Make me dizzy? There was one last thing to try. He stood very still with his back to the balloon. Which, he thought, you can't resist. He felt the sound of the green slime cloud, the kept bag of sour air, the squeal and stir of mouse wicker on wicker as the shadow cooled his legs, his spine, his neck. Close? The witch took air, weight, night burden, and stark cold wind ballast. Closer. Elephant shadow stroked his ears. He nudged his weapons. The shadow engulfed him. A spider flicked his hair. Her hand? Choking a scream, he spun. The witch leaned out, was a mere foot away. He bent, snatched. The witch tried to scream out breath when she smelled, felt, knew what he held tight.
But in reaction, horrified, she seized a breath, sucked weight, burdened the balloon. It dragged the roof. Will pulled the bowstring back, freighted with a single destruction. The bow broke in 2 pieces. He stared at the unshot arrow in his hands. The witch let out her breath in one great sigh of relief and triumph. The balloon swung up. It struck him with its dry rattle, chucking heavy-laden basket. The witch shouted again with insane happiness. Clutched to the basket rim, Will with one free hand drew back and with all his strength threw the arrowhead flint at the balloon flesh. The witch gagged. She tore at his face. Then the arrow, a long hour it seemed in flight, raised a small vent in the balloon. Rapidly, the shaft sank as if cutting a vast green cheese. The surface slit itself further in a wide, ripping smile across the entire surface of the gigantic pair as the blind witch gabbled, moaned, blistered her lips, shrieked in protest, and Will hung fast, hands gripped to the wicker, kicking legs as the balloon wailed, whiffed, guzzled, and mourned its own swift, gaseous death, as dungeon air raved out, as dragon breath gushed forth, and the bag, thus driven, retreated up. Will let go. Space whistled about him. He turned, hit shingles, fell, skidding down the inclined ancient roof, over, down to rim, to rain spout where he fell feet first. He spilled into further emptiness. Yelling, clawed at the rain gutter, held tight, felt it groan, give way as he swept the sky to see the balloon whistling, wrinkling, flying up like a wounded beast to evacuate its terrified exhalations in the clouds, a gunshot mammoth not wanting to expire, yet in terrible flux coughing out its stinking winds. All this in a flash. Then Will flailed into space, with no time to be glad for a tree beneath when it netted him, cut him, but broke his fall with mattress twig, branch, and limb. Like a kite he was held face up to the moon, where, at his exhausted leisure, he might hear the last witch lamentations, for awake in progress as the balloon spiraled her away from house, street, town, within human mourns. The balloon smile, the balloon rip, was all-encompassing now, as it wandered in deliriums to die in meadows from which it had come, sinking down now beyond all the sleeping, ignorant, and unknowing houses. For a long while, Will could not move. Buoyed in the tree branches, afraid he might slip through and kill himself on the black earth below, he waited for the sledgehammer to subside in his head. The blows of his heart might jar him loose, crash him down, but he was glad to hear them, know himself alive. But then at last, gone calm, he gathered his limbs, most carefully searched for a prayer, and climbed himself down through the tree. Nothing much else happened for all the rest of that night. Oh, chapter 31. Nothing much else happened all the rest of that night. Chapter 32. The world's shortest chapter. It is a single sentence. Also, thank you so much for the lurk, Mixgeist, and congratulations on the 2nd trophy. At dawn, a juggernaut of thunder wheeled over the stony heavens in a spark-throwing tumult. Rain fell softly on town copulas, chuckled from rainspouts, and spoke in strange subterranean tongues between the windows where Jim and Will knew fitful dreams, slipping out of one, trying another for size, but finding all cut from the same dark, moldering cloth. In the rustled drum beat, a second thing occurred. From the sodden carnival grounds, the carousel suddenly spasmed to life. Its calliope fluted up
malodorous steams of music. Perhaps only one person in town heard, and guessed that the carousel was working again. The door to Miss Foley's house opened and shut. Her footsteps hurried away along the street. Then the rain fell hard as lightning did a crippled dance down the now totally revealed, now vanishing forever land. In Jim's house, in Will's house, as the rain nuzzled the breakfast windows, there was a lot of quiet talk, some shouting, and more quiet talk again. At 9:15, Jim shuffled out into the Sunday weather, wearing his raincoat, cap, and rubbers. He stood gazing at his roof where the giant snail track was washed away. He then stared at Will's door to make it open. It did. Will emerged. His father's voice followed. "Want me to come along?" Will shook his head firmly. The boys walked solemnly, the sky washing them, toward the police station where they would talk, to Miss Foley's where they would apologize again. But right now they only walked, hands in pockets, thinking of yesterday's fearful prizes. At last Jim broke the silence. "Last night, after we washed off the roof, I finally got to sleep, I dreamed a funeral. Came right down Main Street, like a visit. Or a parade? That's it. 1,000 people all dressed in black coats, black hats, black shoes, and a coffin 40 feet long. Criminy, right? What's 40 feet long needs to be buried, I thought. And in the dream I ran up and looked in. Don't laugh. I don't feel funny, Jim. In the long coffin was a big, long, wrinkled thing like a prune or a big grape lying in the sun, like a big skin or a giant's head, drying. The balloon! Hey," Jim stopped. "You must have had the same dream, but balloons can't die, can they?" Will was silent. "And you don't have funerals for them, do you?" "Jim, darn balloon, laid out like a hippo someone leaked the wind out of. Jim, last night, black plumes waving, band banging on black velvet muffled drums with black ivory bones, boy, boy, boy. Then, on top of it, have to get up this morning and tell Mom, not everything, but enough, so she cried and yelled and cried some more. Women sure like to cry, don't they? And called me her criminal son, but we didn't do anything bad, did we, Will? Someone almost took a ride on a merry-go-round." Jim walked along in the rain. "I don't think I want any more of that." "You don't think? After all of this? Good grief, let me tell you." "Oh my gosh, Grandpa's Ghost, thank you so much for the raid. And Jazz, congratulations on the 3rd trophy. I will do these things. Hello, everyone. I will take care of the care package. I will do that. Hi." Oh, good stretch. All right, welcome in. My name is Cain. ModernDaeCain. You guys can just call me Cain. Jazz, if you're here, could you shout out Grandpa's Ghost for me? That would be awesome. But yeah, I'm Cain. I am a VTuber, Eldritch Dear God thing. Right now, we're currently reading one of my all-time favorite books, Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. For those of you who have been hanging out already, though, and don't know about Grandpa's Ghost, you should absolutely go check him out. He's very cool, has very chill streams, just an absolute lovely person. Go check him out. For those of you who have joined in the raid, thank you so much for coming. You're welcome to hang out and chill with me as I continue reading, or you can go do whatever you want. If you have another stream you want to go to, or if you want to go grab some food or something, or take a break after Grandpa's Ghost stream, you are absolutely welcome to do that. For right now, we're just chilling and reading. Yeah, absolutely, Grandpa's Ghost. Thank you again so much for the raid. I really appreciate it. We're gonna keep going for a while. We read, basically I read until my voice starts to give out.
And we've been going for an hour, so stream might go on for another half hour, 45 minutes. But we're just having a chill time, and I hope you guys enjoy the vibes, if nothing else. Alright. I'm gonna drink a little bit more water. And basically, to sum up what's happened in the book so far, two boys are basically in a mind battle against a haunted carnival. That's a terrible explanation, but that pretty much gets it done. We are on chapter 32, so if you just want to stick around for the vibes, again, I really appreciate it. You don't think? After all this? Good grief, let me tell you. The witch, Jim, the balloon. Last night, all alone, But there was no time to tell it. No time to tell his stabbing the balloon, so it gusted away, to die in a lonely country, sinking the blind woman with it. No time, because walking in the cold rain now, they heard a sad sound. They were passing an empty lot, deep within which stood a vast oak tree. Under it were rainy shadows, and the sound. Jim, said Will. Someone's crying. No. Jim moved on. There's a little girl in there. No. Jim would not look. What would a girl be doing out under a tree in the rain? Come on. Jim, you hear her. No, I don't. I don't. But then the crying came stronger across the dead grass, flew like a sad bird through the rain, and Jim had to turn, for there was Will marching across the rubble. Jim, that voice, I know it. Will, don't go there. And Jim did not move, but Will stumbled and walked until he entered the shade of the reigning tree, where the sky fell and was lost in autumn leaves and crept down at last in shining rivers along the branches and trunk, and there was a little girl, crouched, face buried in her hands, weeping as if the town were gone, and the people in it, and herself lost in terrible woods. And at last Jim came, edging up, and sat at the edge of the shadow and said, Who is it? I don't know. Will felt tears start to his eyes as if some part of him guessed. It's not Jenny Holdridge, is it? No. Jane Franklin? No. His lips felt numb, felt full of Novocaine. His tongue merely stirred in his numb lips. No. The little girl wept, feeling them near, but not looking up yet. Me, help me. Nobody'll help me. Me, I don't like this. When she had strength enough and was quieter, she turned her face, her eyes almost swollen shut with weeping. She was shocked to see anyone near, then surprised. Jim! Will! Oh God, it's you! She seized Jim's hand. He writhed back, yelling, No, I don't know you, let go. Will! Help me, Jim! Oh, don't go, don't leave! She gasped brokenly, new tears bursting from her eyes. No, don't, screamed Jim. He thrashed, he broke free, fell, leaped to his feet, one fist raised to strike. He stopped, trembling, held it to his side. Oh, Will, let's get out of here. I'm sorry. Oh, God. The little girl, in the shadow of the tree, flung back, widened her eyes to fix the two in wetness, moaned, clutched herself, and rocked back and forth, her own child baby, comforting her elbows. Soon she might sing to herself, and sing that way alone beneath the dark tree, forever, no one able to join or stop the song. Someone must help me. Someone must help her, she mourned, as for one dead. Someone must help her. Nobody will. Nobody has. Help her, if not me. Terrible. She knows us, said Will hopelessly, half bent to her, half turned to Jim. I can't leave her. Lies, said Jim wildly. Lies. She don't know us. Never saw her before. "She's gone, bring her back, she's gone, bring her back," mourned the girl, eyes shut. "Find who?" Will got down on one knee, dared to touch her hand. She grabbed him. Almost immediately she knew this was wrong, for he tried to tear free, so she let him go, and wept while he waited near, and Jim, far out in the dead grass, called in for them to go. He didn't like it. They must go. "Oh, she's lost," sobbed the little girl. "She ran off in that place and never came back. Will you find her, please? Please?" Shivering, Will touched her cheek. "Hey now," he whispered. "You'll be okay. I'll find help." He said gently. She opened her eyes. "This is Will Holloway, okay? Cross my heart, we'll be back. 10 minutes. But you mustn't go away." She shook her head. "You'll wait here under the tree for us." She nodded, mutely. He stood up. The simple motion frightened her and she flinched. So he waited and looked at her and said, "I know who you are." He saw the great familiar eyes open gray in the small wounded face. He saw the long rain-washed black hair and pale cheeks. "I know who you are, but I got to check." "Who will believe me?" she wailed. "I believe," Will said. And she lay back against the tree, her hands in her lap, trembling, very thin, very white, very lost, very small. "Can I go now?" he said. She nodded, and he walked away. At the edge of the lot, Jim stomped his feet in disbelief, almost hysterical with outrage and declamation. "It can't be." "It is," said Will. "The eyes, that's how you tell. Like it was with Mr. Cougar and the evil boy. There's one way to be sure. Come on." And he took Jim through town, and they stopped at last in front of Miss Foley's house, and looked at the unlit windows in the morning gloom, and walked up the steps and rang the bell, once, twice, 3 times. Silence. Very slowly, the front door moved, whining back on its hinges. "Miss Foley?" Jim called softly. Somewhere, off in the house, shadows of rain moved on far window panes. "Miss Foley?" They stood in the hall, by the bead rain in the entry door, listening to the great attic beams a shift and a stir in the downpour. "Miss Foley!" Louder. But only the mice in the walls, warmly nestled, made graffitoed sounds in answer. "She's gone out to shop," said Jim. "No," said Will. "We know where she is." "Miss Foley, I know you're here!" shouted Jim suddenly, savagely, dashing upstairs. "Come on out, you!" Will waited for him to search, and dragged slowly back down. As Jim reached the bottom of the steps, they both heard the music blowing through the front door, with the smell of fresh rain and ancient grass. The carousel calliope among the hills, piping the funeral march backwards. Jim opened the door wider and stood in the music, as one stands in the rain. "The merry-go-round! They fixed it!" Will nodded. She must have heard the music. Gone out at sunrise. Something went wrong. Maybe the carousel wasn't fixed right. Maybe accidents happen all the time. Like the lightning rod man, him inside out and crazy. Maybe the carnival likes accidents. Gets a kick out of them. Or maybe they did something to her on purpose. Maybe they wanted to know more about us. Our names, where we live, or wanted her to help them hurt us. Who knows what. Maybe she got suspicious and scared. Then they just gave her more than she ever wanted or asked for. I don't understand. But now, in the doorway, in the cold rain, there was time to think of Miss Foley afraid of mere mazes. Miss Foley alone, not so long ago at the carnival, and maybe screaming when they did what they finally did to her, around and around, around and around. Too many years, more years than she ever dreamed of, shucked away, rubbing her raw, leaving her naked, small, alone, and bewildered, because unknown even to herself, around and around, until all the years were gone, and the carousel rocked to halt like a roulette wheel, and nothing gained, and all lost, and nowhere to go, no way to tell the strangeness, and nothing to do but weep under a tree, alone in the autumn rain. Will thought this. Jim thought it, and said, Oh, the poor... We gotta help her, Jim. Who else would believe? If she tells anyone, I'm Miss Foley, get away, they'd say. Miss Foley left town, disappeared. Go on, little girl. Oh, Jim, I bet she's pounded on a dozen doors this morning, wanting help, scared people with her screaming and yelling, then run off, gave up, and hid under that tree. Police are probably looking for her now, but so what? It's just a wild girl crying, and they'll lock her away and she'll go crazy. That carnival boy, do they know how to punish you so you can't hit back? They just shake you up and change you so no one ever knows you again, and let you run free. It's okay. Go ahead. Talk. Because folks are too scared of you to listen. Only we here, Jim. Only you and me, because right now I feel like I just ate a cold snail raw. They looked back a last time at the shadows of rain crying on the windows inside the parlor, where a teacher had often served them cookies and hot chocolate and waved to them from the window, and moved tall through the town. Then they stepped out and shut the door, and ran back toward the empty lot. We gotta hide her, we can help. We gotta hide her, we can help. Help, panted Jim. We can't help ourselves. There's gotta be weapons, right in front of us. We're just too blind. They stopped. Beyond the thump of their own hearts, a greater heart thumped. Brass trumpets wailed, trombones blared. A herd of tubas made an elephant charge, alarmed for unknown reasons. The carnival, gasped Jim. We never thought. It can come right into town, a parade, or that funeral I dreamed about, for the balloon? Not a funeral. And only what looks like a parade, but that's a search for us, Jim. For us, or Miss Foley if they want her back. They can march down any old street fine and dandy, and spy as they go, drum and bugle. Jim, we gotta get her before they... And breaking off, they flung themselves down an alley, but stopped suddenly and leaped to hide behind some bushes. At the far end of the alley, the carnival band, animal wagons, clowns, freaks and all, banged and crashed between them and the empty lot and the great oak tree. It must have taken 5 minutes for the parade to pass. The rain seemed to move on away, the clouds moving with them. The rain ceased. The strut of drums faded. The boys loped down the alley, across the street, and stopped by the empty lot. But there was no girl under the tree. They circled it, looked up in it, not daring to call a name. Then, very much afraid, they ran to hide themselves somewhere in town. Chapter 33. Oh, they're trying to figure out how to save her. I love the empathy. Yeah, they're doing their best. They're just a couple of boys who are 13. They're doing their best. I'm still here just lurking. Thank you so much for the lurk, Miss Tori. I appreciate it. Chapter 33. The phone rang. Mr. Holloway picked it up. Dad, this is Willie. We can't go to the police station. We may not be home today. Tell Mom, tell Jim's mom. Willie, where are you? We got to hide. They're looking for us. Who, for God's sake? Don't want you in it, Dad. You gotta believe me. We'll just hide 1 day, 2, until they go away. If we come home, they'd follow and hurt you, or Ma, or Jim's mom. I gotta go. Willie, don't. Oh, Dad, said Will. Wish me luck. Click. Mr. Holloway looked out at the trees, the houses, the streets, hearing a faraway music. Willie, he said to the dead phone, luck. And he put on his coat and hat and went out into the strange, bright, rainy sunshine that filled the cold air. Chapter 34. In front of the United Cigar Store, on this before-noon Sunday, with the bells of all churches ringing across here, colliding with each other, there showering sound from the sky now that the rain was spent. In front of the cigar store, the Cherokee wooden Indian stood, his carved plumes pearled with water, oblivious to Catholic or Baptist bells, oblivious to the steadily approaching sun-bright cymbals, the thumping pagan heart of the carnival band, the flourished drums, the old womanish shriek of Calliope, the shadow drift of creatures far stranger than he,
did not wish the Indians' yellow hawk-faced gaze. Still the drums did tilt churches and plummet forth mobs of boys, curious and eager for any change mild or wild. So as the church bells stopped their silver and iron rain, pew-stiffened crowds became relaxed parade crowds as the carnival, a promotion of brass, a flush of velvet, a line pacing, mammoth shuffling, flag fluttered by. The shadow of the Indian's wooden tomahawk lay on an iron grill embedded in the sidewalk in front of the cigar store. Over this grill, with faint metallic reverberations, year after year, people passed, dropping tonnages of mint gum wrapper, gold cigar band, match stub, cigarette butt, or copper penny, which vanished below forever. Now, with the parade, hundreds of feet rang and clustered on the grill as the carnival strolled by on stilts, roared by in tiger and volcano sounds and colors. Under the grill, two shapes trembled. Above, like a great Baroque peacock striding the bricks and asphalt, the freak's eyes opened out to stare, to search office roofs, church spires, read dentists' and opticians' signs, check dime and dry goods stores as drums shocked plate glass windows and wax dummies quaked in facsimiles of fear. A multitude of hot and incredibly bright, fierce eyes. The parade moved, desiring, but not quenching its desire. For the things it wanted most were hidden in dark. Jim and Will, under the cigar store sidewalk grill. Crouched, pressed knee to knee, heads up, eyes alert, they sucked in their breaths like iron popsicles. Above, women's dresses flowered in a cold breeze. Above, men tilted on the sky. The band, in a collision of cymbals, knocked children against their mothers' knees with concussion. "There!" exclaimed Jim. "The parade! It's right out in front of the cigar store. What are we doing here, Jim? Let's go!" "No!" cried Will, hoarsely clenching Jim's knee. "It's the most obvious place, in front of everybody. They'll never think to check here. Shut up!" Thrum. The grill above rang with the touch of a man's shoe, the worn nails in that shoe. "Dad!" Will almost cried. He rose, sank back, biting his lips. Jim saw the man above wheel this way, wheel that, searching so near yet so far, 3 feet away. I could just reach up, thought Will. But Dad, pale, nervous, hurried on, and Will felt his soul fall over cold and white jelly quivering inside. Bang! The boys jerked up. A chewed lump of pink bubble gum, falling, had hit a pile of old paper near Jim's foot. A 5-year-old boy, above, crouching on the grill, peered down in dismay after his vanished sweet. "Git," thought Will. The boy knelt, hands to the grill. "Go on," thought Will. He had a crazy wish to grab the gum and stuff it back into the little boy's mouth. The parade drum thumped one time, then silence. Jim and Will glanced at each other. The parade, both thought. It's halted. The small boy stuck one hand half through the grill. Above in the street, Mr. Dark, the illustrated man, glanced back over his river of freaks, cages, and the sunburst tubas and python brass horns. He nodded. The parade fell apart. The freaks hurried half to one sidewalk, half to the other, mingling with crowd, passing out handbills, eyes fire crystal quick, striking like snakes. The small boy's shadow cooled Will's cheek. The parade's over, he thought. Now the search begins. "Look, Ma!" The small boy pointed through the grill. "There!" Chapter 35. Thank you for the elongate the bones. I will do that. And I just drank, but I will do it again. Oh, man. I'm gonna be out of water soon. Actually, I am out of water. That would not soon. It's happened. I'll have to go get water next chapter. In Ned's night spot, half a block from the cigar store, Charles Holloway, exhausted from no sleep, too much thinking, far too much walking, finished his second coffee and was about to pay when the sharp silence from the street outside made him uneasy. He sensed, rather than saw, the mild, intermingled disturbance as the parade melted among the sidewalk crowds. Not knowing why, Charles Holloway put his money away. "Warm it up again, Ned?" Ned was pouring coffee when the door swung wide. Someone entered and splayed his right hand lightly on the counter. Charles Holloway stared. The hand stared back at him. There was a single eye tattooed on the back of each finger. "Mom, down there, look!" the boy cried, pointing through the grill. More shadows passed and lingered, including the skeleton. Tall as a dead tree in winter, all skull, all scarecrow, stilted bones, the thin man, the skeleton. Mr. Skull played his xylophone shadow upon hidden things, cold paper rubbish, warm, flinching boys below. "Go!" thought Will. "Go!" The plump fingers of the child gesticulated through the grill. "Go!" Mr. Skull walked away. "Thank God," thought Will, then gasped, "Oh no!" For the dwarf, suddenly appeared, waddling along, a fringe of bells on his dirty shirt jingling softly, his toad shadow tucked under him, his eyes like broken splinters of brown marble, now bright on the surface mad, now deeply mournfully forever lost and gone, buried away mad, looking for something that could not be found, a lost self somewhere. Lost boys for an instant, then the lost self again. Two parts of the little squashed man fought to jerk his flashing eyes here, there, around, up, down, one seeking the past, one the immediate present. "Mama," said the child. The dwarf stopped and looked at the boy no bigger than himself. Their eyes met. Will flung himself back, tried to gum his body to the concrete. He felt Jim do the same, not moving, but moving his mind, his soul, thrusting it into darkness, to hide from the little drama above. "Come on, Junior," a woman's voice. The boy was pulled up and away. Too late. For the dwarf was looking down, and in his eyes were the lost bits and fitful pieces of a man named Fury, who had sold lightning rods. How many days, how many years ago, in the long, the easy, the safe, the wondrous time before this fright was born. "Oh, Mr. Fury," thought Will, "what they've done to you. Threw you under a pile driver, squashed you in a steel press, squeezed the tears and screams out of you, trapped you in a jack-in-the-box, all pressed down until there's nothing left of you, Mr. Fury. Nothing left but this." Dwarf. And the dwarf's face was less human, more machine now, in fact. The camera. The shuddering eyes flacked, sightless, opening upon darkness. Tick. Two lenses expanded, contracted with liquid swiftness. A picture snap of the grill. A snap also of what lay beneath? Is he staring at the metal, thought Will, or the spaces between the metal? For a long moment, the ruined-squashed clay doll dwarf squatted while standing tall. His flash camera eyes were bulbed wide, perhaps still taking pictures. Will, Jim, were not seen really at all. Only their shape, their color, and size were borrowed by these dwarf camera eyes. They were clapped away in a box brownie skull. Later, how much later, the picture would be developed by the wild, the tiny, the forgetful, the wandering, and lost lightning rod mind that lay under the grill. What lay under the grill would be really seen, and after that, revelation, revenge, destruction. Click, snap, tick. Children ran by. The dwarf child, drawn by their running joy, was swept along with them. Madly he skipped off, remembering himself, and went looking for something. He knew not what. The cloudy sun poured light through all the sky. The two boys, boxed in light-slotted pit, hissed their breath softly out through gritted teeth. Jim squeezed Will's hand, tight, tight. Both waited for more eyes to stride along and rake the steel grill. The blue-red-green tattooed eyes, all 5 of them, fell away from the countertop.
Charles Holloway, sipping his third coffee, turned slightly on the revolving stool. The illustrated man was watching him. Charles Holloway nodded. The illustrated man did not nod or blink, but stared until the janitor wanted to turn away, but did not, and simply gazed as calmly as possible at the impertinent intruder. "What'll it be?" asked the cafe proprietor. "Nothing." Mr. Dark watched Will's father. "I'm looking for 2 boys." "Who isn't?" Charles Holloway rose, paid, walked off. "Thanks, Ned." In passing, he saw the man with the tattoos hold his hands out, palms up, toward Ned. "Boys," said Ned. "How old?" The door slammed. Mr. Dark watched Charles Holloway walk off outside the window. Ned talked, but the illustrated man did not hear. Outside, Will's father moved toward the library, stopped, moved towards the courthouse, stopped, waited for some better sense to direct him, felt his pocket, missed his smokes, and turned toward the United Cigar Store. Jim looked up, saw familiar feet, pale face, salt and pepper hair. "Will, your dad! Call to him, he'll help us." Will could not speak. "I'll call to him." Will hit Jim's arm, shook his head violently. "No." "Why not?" mouthed Jim. "Because," said Will's lips. "Because," he gazed up. Dad looked even smaller up there than he had last night, seen from the side of the house. It would be like calling to one more boy passing. They didn't need one more boy. They needed a general. No, a major general. He tried to see Dad's face at the cigar counter window, and discovered whether it looked really older, firmer, stronger, than it did last night, washed with all the milk colors of the moon. But all he saw was Dad's fingers twitch nervously, his mouth working, as if he didn't dare ask his needs from Mr. Tetley. One 25-cent cigar." "My God," said Mr. Tetley above, "the man's rich!" Charles Holloway took his time removing the cellophane, waiting for some hint, some move on the part of the universe to show him where he was going. Why had he come back this way for a cigar he did not really want? He thought he heard himself called twice, glanced swiftly at the crowd, saw clowns passing with handbills, then lit the cigar he did not want from the eternal blue gas flame that burned in a small silver jet pipe on the counter. In puffing smoke, dropped the cigar band with his free hand, saw the band bounce on the metal grill and vanish, his eyes following it further down to where it lit at the feet of Will Holloway, his son. Charles Holloway choked on cigar smoke. 2 shadows there, yes, and the eyes, terror gazing up out of the dark well under the street. He almost bent to seize the grate, yelling. Instead, incredulous, he blurted softly with the crowd around and the weather clearing. "Jim? Will? What the hell's going on?" At which moment, 100 feet away, the illustrated man came out of Ned's night spot. "Mr. Holloway," said Jim. "Come up out of there," said Charles Holloway. The illustrated man, a crowd among crowds, pivoted slowly, then walked toward the cigar store. "Dad, we can't do it. Don't look at us down here." The illustrated man was some 80 feet away. "Boys," said Charles Holloway, "the police." "Mr. Holloway," said Jim hoarsely, "we're dead if you don't look up. The illustrated man, if he—" "The what?" asked Mr. Holloway. "The man with the tattoos." From the cafe counter, 5 electric blue inked eyes fixed Mr. Holloway's memory. "Dad, look over at the courthouse clock while we tell you what happened." Mr. Holloway straightened up, and the illustrated man arrived. He stood studying Charles Holloway. "Sir," said the illustrated man. 11:15, Charles Holloway judged the courthouse clock, adjusted his wristwatch, cigar in his mouth. 1 minute slow. "Sir," said the illustrated man. Will held Jim. Jim held Will, fast in the gum-paper tobacco-littered pit, as the 4 shoes rocked, shuffled, tilted above. "Sir," said the man named Dark, probing Charles Holloway's face for the bones there to compare to other bones and other half-similar people. The Cougar Dark Combined Shadow Shows have picked 2 local boys, 2, to be our special guests during our celebratory visit. Well, Will's father tried not to glance at the sidewalk. These 2 boys. Will watched the tooth-sharp shoe nails of the illustrated man flash, sparking the grill. These boys will ride all rides, see each show, shake hands with every performer, go home with magic kits, baseball bats. Who, interrupted Mr. Holloway, are these lucky boys? 2 selected from photos snapped in our midway yesterday. Identify them, sir, and you will share their fortune. There are the boys. He sees us down here, thought Will. Oh, God. The illustrated man thrust out his hands. Will's father lurched. Tattooed in bright blue ink, Will's face gazed up at him from the palm of the right hand. Ink sewn into the left palm, Jim's face was indelible and natural as life. You know them? The illustrated man saw Mr. Holloway's throat clench. His eyes squinched his bones struck vibrant from sledgehammer blow. Their names! Dad, careful, Will thought. I don't, said Will's father. You know them. The illustrated man's hands shook, held out to view, asking for the gift of names, making Jim's face on the flesh and Will's face on the flesh, Jim's face hidden beneath the street, Will's face hidden beneath the street, tremble, writhe, pinch. Sir, you wouldn't want them to lose out. No, but... Mr. Dark loomed closer, magnificent in his picture gallery flesh, his eyes the eyes of all his beast and hapless creatures cutting through his shirt, coat, trousers, fastening the old man tight, biting him with fire, fixing him with thousandfold attentions. Mr. Dark shoved his 2 palms near. But... Mr. Holloway, needing something to excruciate, bit his cigar. I thought for a moment... Thought what? Grand delight from Mr. Dark. One of them looked like... Like who? Too eager, thought Will. You see that, Dad, don't you? Mister, said Will's father, why are you so jumpy about 2 boys? Jumpy? Mr. Dark's smile melted like cotton candy. Jim scooted himself down into dwarf. Will crammed himself down into a midget, both looking up, waiting. Sir, said Mr. Dark, is my enthusiasm that to you? Jumpy. Will's father noted the muscles cord along the arms, roping and unroping themselves like a writhe, with a writhe like the puff adders and sidewinders doubtless inked and venomous there. One of those pictures, drawled Mr. Holloway, looks like Milton Blomquist. Mr. Dark clenched a fist. A blinding ache struck Jim's head. The other, said Will's father. Will's father was almost bland. Looks like Avery Johnson. Oh, Dad, thought Will, you're great. The illustrated man clenched his other fist. Will, his head in a vice, almost screamed. Both boys, finished Mr. Holloway, moved to Milwaukee some weeks ago. You, said Mr. Dark coldly, lie. Will's father was truly shocked. Me? And spoil the prize winner's fun. Fact is, said Mr. Dark, we found the names of the boys 10 minutes ago. Just wanted to double check. So? Said Will's father, disbelieving. Jim, said Mr. Dark. And Will. Jim writhed in the dark. Will sank his head deep in his shoulder blades, eyes tight. Will's father was a pond into which the 2 dark stone names sank without a ripple. First names, Jim, Will. Lots of Jims and Wills. A couple hundred town like this. Will crouched and squirming thought, who told? Miss Foley? But she was gone, her house empty and full of rain shadows. Only other person, the little girl like Miss Foley, weeping under the tree? The little girl who frightened us so bad, he wondered. In the last half hour the parade going by found her and her crying for hours, afraid and ready to do anything, say anything, if only with music, horses plunging, world racing, they would grow her old again, grow her around again, lift her, shut her up her crying, stop the awful thing and make her as she was. Did the carnival promise lie to her when they found her under the tree and ran her off? The little girl crying, but not telling all because... Jim? Will? Said Will's father. First names. What about the last? Mr. Dark did not know the last names. His universe of monsters sweated phosphorus on his hide, soured his armpits, reeked, slammed between his iron-sinewed legs. Now, said Will's father, with a strange and to him almost delightful, because new, calm, I think you're lying. You don't know the last names. Now, why should you, a carnival stranger, lie to me here on the street in some town because lie to me here on a street in some town on the backside of nowhere? The illustrated man clenched his two calligraphic fists very hard. Will's father, his face pale, considered these mean, constricted fingers, knuckles, digging nails, inside which two boys' faces crushed hard in a dark vice, tight, very tight, in flesh prisons, were kept in fury. Two shadows below thrashed in agony. The illustrated man erased his face to serenity, but a bright drop fell from his right fist. A bright drop fell from his left fist. The drops vanished through the steel sidewalk grill. Will gasped. Wetness had struck his face. He clapped his hand to it, then looked at his palm. The wetness that had hit his cheek was bright red. He glanced from it to Jim, who lay still now, also, for the scarification, real or imagined, seemed over, and both flicked their eyes up to where the illustrated man's shoes flint sparked the grill, grinding steel on steel. Will's father saw the blood ooze from the clenched fists, but forced himself to only look at the illustrated man's face as he said, "Sorry I can't be of more help." Beyond, the illustrated man, rounding the corner, hands weaving the air, dressed in harlequin gypsy colors, face waxen, eyes hidden behind plum dark glasses, the fortune-teller, the dust witch, came mumbling. A moment later, looking up, Will saw her. Not dead, he thought. Carried off. Bruised, fallen, yes, but now back and mad. Lord, yes, mad, looking especially for me. Will's father saw her. His blood slowed by instinct alone to a pudding in his chest. The crowd opened happily, laughing, commenting on her bright if tattered costume, trying to remember what she rhymed so as to tell it later. She moved her fingers, feeling the town as if it were an immensely complicated and lush tapestry, and she sang, "Tell your husbands, tell your wives, tell your fortune, tell you your lives. See me, I know, see me at the show. Tell you the color of his eyes, tell you the color of her lies, tell you the color of his soul, tell you the color of his goal, tell you the color of her soul. Come now, don't go. See me at the show." Children appalled, children impressed, parents delighted, parents in high good humor, and still the gypsy from the dusts of living sang. Time walked in her murmuring. She made and broke microscopic webs between her fingers, wherewith to feel soot fly up, breath fly out. She touched the wings of flies, the souls of invisible bacteria, all specks, mites, and mica snowings of sunlight filtrated with motion and much more hidden emotion. Will and Jim cracked their bones, cowering below, hearing, "Blind, yes, blind, but I see what I see where I be," said the witch softly. "There's a man with a straw hat and autumn. Hello! And why, there's Mr. Dark and an old man. An old man." "He's not that old," cried Will to himself, blinking up at the three, as the witch stopped, her shadow falling moist frog cool over the hidden boys. Old man. Mr. Holloway was jolted, as if by a series of cold knives thrust in his stomach. Old man, said the witch. She stopped this. Ah. The hairs in her nostrils bristled. She gaped her mouth to savor air. Ah.
The illustrated man quickened. "Wait," sighed the gypsy. Her fingernails scraped down an unseen blackboard of air. Will felt himself yip, bark, whimper like an aggravated hound. Slowly her fingers climbed down, feeling the spectrums, weighing the light. In another moment a forefinger might thrust to the sidewalk grill, implying, "There! There!" "Dad," thought Will, "do something!" The illustrated man, gone sweetly patient now that his blind but immensely aware dust lady was here, watched her with love. "Now," the witch's fingers itched. "Now," said Will's father loud. The witch flinched. "Now this is a fine cigar," yelled Will's father, turning with great pomp back to the counter. "Quiet," said the illustrated man. The boys looked up. "Now," the Dutch witch sniffed the wind. "Got to light it again!" Mr. Holloway stuck the cigar in the eternal blue flame. "Silence," suggested Mr. Dark. "Ever smoke yourself?" asked Dad. The witch, from the concussion of his fiercely erupted and over-jovial words, dropped one wounded hand to her side, wiped sweat from it as one wipes an antenna for better reception, and drifted it up again. Her nostrils flared with wind. "Ah!" Will's father blew a dense cloud of cigar smoke. It made a fine, thick cumulus surrounding the woman. "Gah!" she choked. "Fool!" the illustrated man barked, but whether at man or woman the boys below could not tell. "Here, let's buy you one." Mr. Holloway blew more smoke, handing Mr. Dark a cigar. The witch exploded a sneeze, recoiled, staggered away. The illustrated man snatched Dad's arm, saw that he had gone too far, let go, and could only follow his gypsy woman off in some clumsy and totally unexpected defeat. But then, in going, he heard Will's father say, "A fine day to you, sir." "No, Dad," thought Will. The illustrated man came back. "Your name, sir?" he asked directly. "Don't tell him," thought Will. Will's father debated a moment, took the cigar from his mouth, tapped ash, and said quietly, "Holloway. Work in the library. Drop by sometime." "You can be sure, Mr. Holloway. I will." The witch was waiting near the corner. Mr. Holloway wetted his forefinger, tested the wind, and set cumulus her way. She flailed back. Gone. The illustrated man went rigid, spun about, and strode off. The ink portraits of Jim and Will crushed hard iron in his fists. Silence. It was so quiet under the grill. Mr. Holloway thought the two boys had died of fright. And Will, below, gazing up, eyes wet, mouth wide, thought, "Oh my gosh. Why didn't I see it before? Dad's tall. Dad's very tall indeed." Still, Charles Holloway did not look down at the grill, but only at the small comet of splashed red color left on the sidewalk, trailed around the corner, and dropped from the clenched hands of the vanished Mr. Dark. He was also gazing with surprise at himself, accepting the surprise, the new purpose, which was half despair, half serenity, now that the incredible deed was done. Let no one ask why he had given his true name. Even he could not say, and give it its real weight. Now he could only read numerals on the courthouse clock and speak to it, while the boys below listened. "Oh, Jim, Will, something is going on. Can you hide? Keep out from under the rest of the day? We got to have time. With things like this, where do you begin? No law's been broken, none on the books anyway, but I feel dead and buried a month. My flesh ripples. Hide, Jim. Will, hide. I'll tell your mothers you've got jobs at the carnival. Good excuse for you not coming home. Stay hidden till dark, then come to the library at 7. Meantime, I'll check police records on carnivals, newspaper files at the library, books, sold folios, everything that might fit. God willing, by the time you show up after dark, I'll have a plan. Walk easy until then. Bless you, Jim. Bless you, Will." The small father, who was very tall now, walked slowly away. His cigar, unnoticed, fell from his hand, dropped in a spark shower through the grate. It lay in the square pit, glowing its single fiery pink eye at Jim and Will, who looked back and at last snatched a blind and put it out. Alright. We've been going for almost 2 hours, so I think that's good enough for tonight. We made it chapter 36 too, so that's a good round number to end it on. We're a little over halfway, so that's fun. Alright. I hope you guys had a good time. Let's see. I know Prof is still streaming. There's also CB. CB's doing art. But I think I'm gonna go to Prof since I'm gonna be hanging out there anyway. So we're gonna raid Prof. Alright. You guys have a good one. And I will catch you maybe tomorrow? I don't know yet. We will see. Alright. I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good night. Goodbye.